Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Jan Erickson from Stepping Aside, and welcome to Somewhat Daily Tarot and Rune for the 28th day of December 2020. Well, let's take a rune here. Let's get those going, and then we'll take a look at the cards. I hope everybody had a good weekend. Looks like the stimulus bill has been signed. The omnibus bill has been signed. They're set to override override the veto on the National Defense Authorization Act today. And supposedly they're going to try and up the ante on the $600 stimulus to $2,000. So we'll see if he really meant what he said and that he'll sign the supplement to it as well. But we'll see. And hopefully he'll get it in his head to go ahead and well, I don't know, maybe once he vetoes something he can't, but they need to override the National Defense Authorization Act too. So I guess they're going to do that, override the veto on that. So our military can be funded. And I mean, it's like, well, he doesn't understand anything. Something about some Section 230, and it has to do with what we can do and say on the internet. And I guess he wants to have unlimited freedom to lie. I guess I don't know. I don't know why you would care other than that. And then the other thing that's contained within that is something to do with money laundering offshore. They're clamping down on that, and so everyone thinks it's really that he's worried about, and not that Section 230. That's just a dodge, although it could be, since he seems to love Twitter so much. Anyway, so I don't know what's happening for sure there, but we'll see. This is Vunyo is our rune for today. It's joy and fellowship. In fact, it's part of the week's bind rune, which is breaking down barriers to fellowship with others. You'll find that over on the side panel of the blog in the same section that I put the videos. It's above the videos. But anyhow, also yesterday's Esoteric Influences video is there as well as on YouTube. And then, and so is the write-up, by the way, the post for it. So anyhow, let's see what our geomancy rune is for today. Oh, okay. So we've got Fortuna Major. Let me see if I can find it here in the cup. Should be right here on the top, because I think it's one of the geomancy runes for the week. So it should be right here. Ah, there it is. Fortuna Major, that's greater fortune. Again, the greater fortune we find in joy and fellowship with one another. I talk about it all the time, going forward in shared purpose. That's really what we were designed to do. Spiritually and effectively, when we're in in non-physical, that's what we do. But evidently we forget all about that here, and we forget that it's not about working your way back to God and pleasing God. It's about realizing the God spark within and the Creator within. Knowing that you're just an aspect of that, a point of light, a point of Creator light, that's experiencing life in a intangible form. The notion of being at odds the way we are, although, it happens, this is a little weird. And so hopefully we'll be able to get back on track. I don't know, though. I think it could take some time, but we'll see. I just think that with a better path forward, where things start happening on behalf of the country, maybe people will see that there's a way to live together here with, it's not that you give up your opinions or anything else. It's just that we have some kind of idea. I need to deal with the glare on this light here. It's just that the whole idea there, that's better. It's just that the idea that we could have such violence. Christmas Day we had the RV that blew up in downtown Nashville, and they're afraid to call this, I guess the media is afraid to call it what it is, a terroristic thing, So it's like, well, and of course, the guy in the Oval Office has said nothing. Nothing. It's a big deal. And he said nothing. Well, there's probably a reason for that, but I suppose we'll find that out later. But it's like if we can't even call something like that what it is because of who it is, we'd have no problem if it was somebody from a foreign country or person of color calling this what it is, right? Again, witches prefer to live in truth. So, truth can be messy, but it's the truth. And we have to know what it is. We can't live in this illusory world of where everything is defined in a way that makes us comfortable. That's not life. Life is not comfortable in form. It just isn't. It's hard to get along with people. Because we prefer, individuality over unity. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And we forget that fundamentally we're one family, So one big, messy, dysfunctional family. But that's what we are, nevertheless. So I don't know. The bind rune for the week is just to remind us that fellowship and integration with one another, breaking down the barriers to that, is just it's better than where we're at now. It's comprised of Vunyo, of Yira, of Hagalaz, and what was the other one? Was it Fehu? Yeah, it was Fehu. Just so cast that intention this week, for fellowship and love and unity with one another. And if we keep doing that, eventually maybe we'll start heading there. So, or more people will start heading there, because I think a lot of people are aligned that way anyway. It's just, can we do it in a way that, without dropping cards, can we do that in a way that actually makes sense? So Vunyo is joy and fellowship, and Fortuna Major is our greater fortune. So that's where our greater fortune lies. So let's see what the cards have to say, and on this Monday, and we'll let this. You can let this gel for a few days, and then Thursday we'll come back and we'll do it all over again, and see if we can get an idea of what the influences are going to be throughout the week, that we can be pondering and thinking about in our lives. So anyhow, if this is your first time here, welcome. Thank you so much. I hope you'll click subscribe and come back. And to everyone who has, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. So let's take our first three cards. Oh, and by the way, if you are new, I take the 13th one each time for randomness sake. So my shuffling, it's never seems to be enough. I'll draw the same doggone cards I did the day before. So anyway, here we go. Well, I about dropped the 13th card, the Queen of Wands. My hands don't always work on a Monday. I don't know what it is. I did finish my shawl, though. Oh, and it turned out so well. Oh, my gosh. I just love it. I'm not wearing it, though. I'm wearing my normal one. Anyway, we have the Queen of Wands. Wands is the fire element. The Queen is a woman who's in authority. She's holding a staff in her right hand and a sunflower in her left. This is a card of vitality. You see her cat sitting there, her black cat, looking at all of us. The Queen of Wands is a take no prisoners kind of individual. She's somebody who is about truth and honesty. She's somebody that, let's see, what else is she? She's generous, she's talented, successful. Anytime you see the fire element, you're talking about, vitality and success and literally the spark of life, really, is what it is. And you see that with the Queen. And again, she's like the Queen of Swords in that regard, where she's just a take no prisoners kind of woman. So we have that kind of influence for today, for the next few days anyway. We have Judgment, the 20th card of the Major Arcana. This might be the significator for the day. We see Angel Gabriel blowing his horn above. We see the cross of as above, so below. It's really, I mean, you can think of it in terms of healing, but that's kind of a judgmental or subjective way of looking at it. Realistically, how I see that cross is you're looking at the vertical line of spirit focusing into form, and then the horizontal plane of what we do when we get here. Ideally, we want to be in that center, and we rarely are. We're usually down toward the bottom of the vertical line. If we could just raise our frequency and get that positioning just a little bit higher, I think we would do a whole lot better. But that's what I think that is. It's coming back into alignment with who you are. And we see everybody coming up out of their coffins, raising their hands in supplication to the Angel Gabriel above. Awakening to truth is what Judgment is really about. It's a card of balance, balancing, the spirituality, our soul with our ego, essentially. I mean, you could look at it that way. But if you want, you can also look at it as healing awareness, healing perception, healing judgment, But getting it back into balance. I really, the crossed flag, you'll see this periodically within tarot, and I just don't see it as healing. Now, if you see the caduceus, I view that as healing, and the winged sun, that's healing. But this, I don't know. I mean, it can be. But I really think it's more about where we're aligning on that cross, on that X pattern or cross pattern. Not really an X pattern, but if you turned it, it would be. But where do you align on it? And ideally, we ought to be in the center. We're not, but we ought to be. Well, here we have the Five of Wands. This is playful struggle. Excuse me. Nobody is really hitting anyone here. They're just sort of, the guys are together, and they look like, adolescent boys, really. And they're just working out their frustrations and their communication and their interactions and their will and all of that is, you could look at a spirit, discussion here, even though it's not swords. But it's sort of everybody, exercising their own will in the way they want to. You can see this one here is holding his way up high. It's like, here I come, Same one over here. He's trying to get into it. And you've got the other three that are mixing it up. 5 is about freedom. It's about, protection. It's about the pentagram. So it's basically energy that's trying to find its alignment, trying to find, its presence, its own expression, maybe. I think we're going to need a 4th card. Let's just go ahead and take it. Right now we've got a 7 energy for it. 20 reduces to 2, so we've got a 2 there. And that's for the Judgment card, and then the 5. So you've got a 7 energy. There's no number associated with the Queen. She'd be 13 or reduced to 4 if we did have one. And if that were the case, we'd have an 11 energy. So illumination, awakening. I don't normally assign a number, though, to the court. But it would just be interesting because really, isn't that what they're looking for? Some kind of an awakening here with Judgment. And as well here, an awakening of expression that's united, maybe, that's in balance with one another. If you think about the pentagram, you're talking the 4 elements, and then the top point is spirit. So you can see how all of that aligned together, functioning together in a balanced way, can create a protective environment for people. So here, in a sense, you could say, well, they're being protected while they're expressing their will. They're not doing it in a way that's harming anyone, in other words. The anti-maskers would do well to benefit from that notion that I realize you disagree, but at minimum you don't have any right to potentially harm others. You could be ill, and if you're not wearing your mask, if you're not wearing it properly, then you're shedding virus on people. And if you happen to be ill, in other words, and you don't realize that, if you're on the upswing of it and you just got infected or something, or maybe you're just somebody that's going to breeze right through it, you're lucky that way, and you don't realize that that's what you have. What if it just comes and goes in the night, right? And the symptoms of it, and you don't know, but you're shedding virus on everybody. You don't have any right to do that. You don't have any right to harm someone else potentially, or worse, or kill them, because you could. Or you could get them sick and they do fine, excuse me, but then they go and they infect, their parents or grandma or whatever, or their neighbor. I've never understood this, to think that we can make a choice, that we think that this is a choice. It really isn't. People are dying. What is it, over 330,000 now? By the time inauguration happens, we could be approaching 400,000 deaths, all because people wouldn't stay home over the holidays, all because they won't wear a mask. We still see people out there on videos, of them being in stores and throwing a fit and causing problems. I saw one guy in a line, checkout line, and he literally tries to pick up his cart because the guy who's masked up behind him, he's got nothing on, right? He's telling him, you got to have a mask on, man. I'm going to be in your airspace here. See, this is what we do. It hangs, right? What does it say? Like 7 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever it is. The droplets will hang in the air. We're all just trying to stay alive. Get on board with it or stay home. I don't know. But, the Five of Wands, you think you're having no effect. If that's what this is representing for some people, you think you're having no effect, but you are. Maybe the at least in this scene, the wands aren't, or the staffs aren't connecting with anybody's head, but Here we have temperance, moderation. I love this card. It's the 14th card of the major arcana. It's a 5 energy. And we're going to align it with the 5 here of wands. Okay? In a sense, the presentation of the 5 is kind of temperance because nobody's hitting anyone. So you can see some parallel there. But let's look at temperance. Temperance both in allowing us to awaken as well. We look at this card. I like that other decks, other non-traditional decks don't call it judgment. What is it? Druidcraft calls it, rebirth? I think rebirth, is it? You've got some that call it eon. I know Crowley's deck does. So does, does Heindel do the same? Somebody else calls it eon as well. But it's the passage into awakening. It's the passage from one state to another. And realistically, when you're coming up out of your coffin, that's essentially what you're doing. You're rising up to meet, your soul is rising up to meet your maker, basically. But the bottom line is that if you're awakening to who you truly are, then why can't you do that now? Why can't you know that now? Why is that any less of a truth when you're in form? That's what I don't understand. It's like somehow we're cut off. Why would we be? If we're cut off, we're choosing to be cut off from spirit. We're choosing to not awaken to that. We're choosing to not turn our attention to it. Because what's awakening? Awakening is just turning your attention to the truth. All right. If you're believing a lie, if you've been deceived or you have the wrong perception about something, and then one day you sort of wake up and you're like, oh, well, all you're doing is you're turning your attention to the truth and you're seeing it now. That's really all you're doing. And in awakening, it's the same thing. It's just, we could say you've awakened to the truth of whatever that faulty perception was, right? And that's realistically what you're doing here. You're awakening to the perceptions that you have that are faulty, and that you really need to transmute that into spirit instead of riding the wave of the ego throughout your life. Because if you do that, that's the service to self attitude that's being expressed. The concept of service to others doesn't even enter in, right? You're only concerned about your own life. You don't even take into account other people. And it's like you have half the country, and I don't want to divide it really into halves, but we'll just, for the sake of argument here, we have half the country that can't understand that we need to be protected right now. And they see it as an impingement on their freedom. Well, that's ego. That's not spirit talking. That's just plain ego. And what temperance is saying for us to do is we see the glyph for fire on the angels right here in the center of the top of the angel's gown. You see the beautiful red wings and the light of source presence emanating from around the angel's head. You see the angel pouring water from one chalice to the other. You see the irises over there on the left side of the angel, our right side. And you see the sun rising in the distance between two peaks. This is a card of balance. This is a card of balancing fire with water. And what that means is balancing will with emotion. If will is too much, then you act in ways, you assert yourself in ways that are very, very, very self-oriented. If the water element is too much, perhaps you're too passive. So you can think of it as balancing passive and projective, or receptive and projective presence together in a way that actually is more meaningful. To where, if too passive, you let everybody walk all over you. If too much will, too much fire, then you're on people all the time about things. And so you find a better balance. The will is then able to think about other people. Both sides, if in too much extreme, are thinking only about themselves. The extreme of the water is you're in a pity party. Think the Four of Cups rather, where you can't see even what's being offered to you. So it's coming to the middle and coming to the center to try to find a balance there, and I think that how we assert authority is part of that. Although you look at the bend in her staff, eventually it finds its way more towards spirit, doesn't it? It's starting to angle upward. So at least the queen is considering that, she's considering that. She's holding and I look at sunflowers as an expression of truth, of vitality, of will, but of a higher sense of it than simply the ego. This is more of a card of spirit presentation than it is of ego, I think, for her. Although ill-dignified, she sure can be. She can have the same issues that the king has. Anyone in authority can. But if we remain moderate in our expression, if we balance ego and will with emotions and passivity, we're not in such a position of extremes, in other words. And right now, that what I think we see, at least in our society, even in our families, we're seeing presentation of extremes. I was listening to a guy talking about his family on his podcast, and how some of them support the current guy in the Oval Office, and they're basically deifying this man. Which, no, come on. I think going forward they're going to find out how wrong they are on that. But the bottom line is one, they're praying for him, and he's like, yeah, back at you. I mean, he doesn't understand. And they don't understand. Neither understands the other. And it's real easy when you're on one side of the equation to feel all important and about your own beliefs because you're right and they're wrong. But the bottom line is that at some point that can't come into play. The only thing that matters is the truth of it. So both sides of the issue could have a distorted view of things, with the truth being somewhere in the middle or somewhere on one side or the other, But the bottom line here is that at some point you've got to drop the extreme and at least be able to have a conversation that's not predicated upon, demeaning one or the other about one thing or another, right? Or to bring, or what's happening now is when people protest for civil rights, you've got another group of people that wants to come in and somehow brand them as Antifa, when what Antifa means is anti-fascism. It means we're against fascism. Fascism is not a good thing, right? And so to be against it is a good thing. So when you go out and you protest for oppression, or I should say against oppressive acts, like like the Black Lives Matter protests and everything to do with out of control police behavior and all of that, trying to get or women's rights or whatever you're protesting, It's like somehow Portland became this massive place on fire. No, it was about 3 blocks. Portland's a big place. I used to live there. It's huge. It was literally, I was listening to Tom Hartman, and it's like literally 3 blocks. And that's what I'd been reading from people that live there. No. It's what we do in Portland. Portland's a protest town. You're expected to do this. You have something to talk about it. You get a group of people and you do that, right? It's always been the case. Protest is protected speech, including the naked yoga lady. All protected speech in Portland, right? Protected expression. We can do this, right? And it didn't mean that Portland was burning down or became the quote unquote Antifa capital of the world. And if you want to call it the anti-fascism capital of the world, I don't have a problem with that. I'm sure no one else does either. But somehow protesting against oppression and harm and authoritarianism is a bad thing. When did that become a bad thing? And yet you've got people coming in and harming people, right? For doing so. They're not doing anything other than marching and listening to speakers when they get to where they're going, and there's music and there's food, and it's this big potluck, right? And somehow or another, this got turned into something completely else by those people coming in to cause harm. There were people down on Labor Day. Was it Labor Day or whatever day it was that they're down there in Salem, and you've got these people running across this expansive ground to attack reporters and a small group of protesters who aren't doing anything. They're just standing there, and they're running across and they're beating them. Okay, this is what I'm talking about. When you see the card of temperance coupled with judgment, it's about talking about how we present ourselves in terms of extremes. And that's never a good thing to do, People can't see the other perspective. You can't, not even long enough to have a dialogue about it. You see, because we can't even do that now. We can't even have a conversation without a bunch of insults and nastiness and violence occurring. That somehow it's okay to harm a segment of the population. That's okay. It's the us versus them mentality that has never served a civilization. It's not that you don't want the spark of creativity. That's the idea behind the fire element. You have the spark of, or the genesis of new ideas, and maybe, other people don't understand them. And so they're like, what are you talking about? But you're just talking, right? So you can sit down and you say, well, this is what I'm talking about. And maybe something you say resonates, which builds on the conversation, right? And so that's all I'm trying to suggest here, is that we've lost that. We've lost the ability to do that. And now things are so nasty and so violent, and to where it's okay to not provide stimulus during the time of a pandemic. And somehow it's okay to not. I don't understand this. It doesn't make any sense to me. And when you have a president who will encourage super spreader and have them Super spreader events. No mask, but do sign off on a piece of paper here saying you won't hold me accountable if you get sick. Well, look, why would you have to do that? Why would you have to sign anything? Right? If there's no problem with this. They wanted the country to get sick. That's what they wanted. He wanted it to, he said it, I want it to wash over the country. And everybody's like, no, you don't. Right? Again, we're diametrically opposed. There's no place for conversation. And that has to end. Okay? It's the reason for the bind rune for the week, about breaking down barriers to joy and fellowship and reunion. We have to at least be able to have a conversation, have a dialogue that doesn't erupt in violence, okay? Or doesn't begin in violence. What we watched at the Oregon Capitol the other day, where you had, and I don't remember what day it was, but you had protesters there. There's and I hope these guys got arrested. I know there was some arrests made, but you had these violent people there, and you had one guy, there's a video of it, him turning his back to the two glass doors going into the Capitol. They're trying to disrupt the meeting there, the legislative meeting. And he's kicking a backwards kick over and over and over again to break and someone else was there, I think, doing the same, but he was the one doing most of the breakage. And I guess that's okay. They threw some kind of I don't know what kind of incendiary thing at the police, or maybe it was pepper spray, or I don't know what they did. They did something against the police there, the Capitol Police in Salem. How does that fix anything? How does that begin a dialogue? You see, it doesn't. It's like, okay, I don't want to talk to you. I don't even want to know these guys, right? Let alone talk to them. And so that's where I think we are. So we're talking for today then how we manifest authority in a way that still respects others, but doesn't deal with nonsense, right? How do we come together in some kind of a willful experience where wills are being expected and nobody gets hurt, right? Because nobody's getting hurt here. And how do we then awaken to truth? Understand the grievances of each side, the truth of them, or the lack thereof. Just because you have a grievance doesn't mean it's based in reality. It could just be your own perception of, I want this, I'm not getting it, that's my grievance. Well, maybe fundamentally it's a choice, right? You don't have to have that. But if it's something you actually have to have in order to survive, and you're not getting it, well then let's listen to that. What is happening in your life that you're not getting what you need? What can we do to help you with that? Is it a societal thing? Is it a community thing? Is it just the choices you're making? Where's the truth here? And that's what I think judgment is asking us to do, is to awaken to truth, to a higher level of truth that seems to govern how we ought to be behaving, And again, in moderation and temperance. Finding that balance between will and emotion, and letting because here you have, it's like the jihadist Führer, right? That's emotion. That is emotion run amok, right? And you cannot see the effect of your behavior, and you've justified it in your own mind that I'm going to do thus and so, right? The suicide bomber in Nashville, full of it was a combination of will and emotion, likely. Although we don't know yet, because we don't know why he did this. We just know who did it. And so basically, at least they think they know anyway. But the long story short of this is that you've got some kind of presence that's out of control. It's either going to be will, It's likely not intellect, but maybe. Manipulation, maybe. But you've got will and you've got emotion that are out of control. And if we don't find a tempered way to express that, then we're going to stay way apart. And the concept of fellowship is not going to happen, right? You know, the vunyo. We will not be expressing the vunyo, and the greater fortune will elude us of what harmony can achieve. Division achieves nothing but more division, see? Harmony, on the other hand, takes us to anywhere we want to go. So, anyhow, that's it. We've done enough damage for one day. And so we'll get together again on Thursday and do this all over again. And so think about this for the next few days and just see how you can manifest a better balance between will and emotions. Try to keep some kind of balance to that so that you don't have one getting away from the other. It really does get in the way of trying to find a unified path forward, or to even try to understand the truth of what's going on. And again, hopefully we can awaken to a different level of perception. So anyhow, that's it. And so thanks so much for watching. Click subscribe. I'd love you to do that again if you haven't. And come back on Thursday and let's do this all over again and see what kind of influences we can have going forward through the weekend. Again, the esoteric influences are up on the blog, both in video and post form. Check out the Patreon page if you want to support me over there. I also post some things over on Medium, so you can look for me there. And I hang out on Twitter, so I'm Mistress Jan over there, so Mistress_Jan. Anyhow, links are below the video to everywhere I'm at if you want to follow me, or I tend to follow back unless I miss it. But anyway, thanks so much, and have a, if you need to go out and about here, please wear a mask, whether you're inside or out, whether you just need to have a mask on when you're around others, and it doesn't matter if you're inside or outside, you need to have a mask on now. And be safe. Be safe for yourself, be safe for your family, be safe for others. And we'll close with be good to yourself, be good to one another, and blessed be.